Good afternoon and welcome to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM. Each week, I invite an expert from the world of business to share their knowledge, insights, and tips to help you with your business challenges. If there's a topic you would like covered, or if you feel you can make a contribution, please email me at yourbusiness@dublincityfm.ie, and perhaps we'll be having a chat here one day soon. My guest today is the owner of Frame FX. He's also the owner of Soulair, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and he's an avid Bose fan. My goodness. So I'm delighted to welcome Leo O'Connor to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Leo.
Hi, Alec. How are you? Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
fantastic. Thanks. We'll get into some of that in a minute. But as I do with all of my guests, I take them back to their sort of last year in school. And were you the sort of academic? Were you the person who wanted to travel? Did you see a trade you wanted to take up? Where did you see yourself?
See, I didn't know where I am now. I am when I finished leaving cert, which was all those years ago, 1976. I went to what was then called the College of Commerce because I thought I'd fancied the career in time management and that type of thing, which I don't even know is still there. But I did the college for a year part time and didn't particularly like it. I didn't think it was for me. That was a part-time course, so I was working in a place in South Ann Street and quickly moved from there. I did go to, I thought marketing might be an area, and I had a look at doing marketing, which I did subsequently do, diploma at marketing, but at that time it was very much not sure where I was going. I have to leave it there.
Yeah, well, listen, time management, it's still around as some other guys these days. I actually am old enough to remember it myself. But of course, studying is one thing, but you were also sort of busy as well. You were working for some electrical company just to kind of fill in time. Plus, you had on top of that.
Yeah, well, for money, obviously. So I was based in, they were based out Ann Street, and I was doing the electrical repairs to electric meters from the old bed sits and that kind of thing. And that wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was a job. And but I was also, my hobby since my early teens, and still is actually, I rarely leave the place to a camera, was photography, and still is. And so I was working from around the camera centre, around the corner from the camera centre, Grafton Street, which I used to spend most of my lunch times browsing in. And they got to know me, and they offered me a job. So I jumped ship from South Ann Street all the way around to the corner at the Grafton Street.
My goodness, the travel came in quickly. Tell me, have you any idea where this sort of love of photography came from?
I'm not quite sure. My father didn't have expensive camera equipment, box cameras, I remember, and cartridge cameras, but he was always taking pictures. He documented an awful lot, and I think it must be that, just because there's so many pictures in my mother's house now with of us growing up and so on. I just thought that was part of it. But I do a lot of walking. I always did a lot of walking, and I joined a photographic group. I had a few photographers in it, and they and that got me more interested. So but that would have been early teens, 14, 15, that kind of age, you know.
I mean, one of the things people try to do these days is to find something they love doing and turning it into a business. So unfortunately, you and I are of an age that wasn't sort of the offering that was out there for us. But you found a hobby, you found something you love doing. So you're now working with the camera centre. What sort of work were you doing there?
Well, that was retail sales. So it was very much behind the counter. And I had a good knowledge because at that point, as I said, I knew my way around the camera, which was helpful. I had set up, I had a dark room at home, because obviously at that time living in my mother's house, with my parents and siblings, and so I had a dark room there. So, and I joined the photographic group in Anoiga because I was involved in Anoiga for the hostel organization, and I helped run that for quite a few years too. So lots of things happened there, and that's that. Even today, like I've from a very young age, I've had a love of Ireland and traveling Ireland. I have traveled quite a bit abroad, but I've a love of Ireland. So the camera went hand in hand with that as well, and I still do that. I still travel Ireland outside of COVID, of course, but I would spend somewhere in it 2 or 3 days a month, indulging in my walking and my photography.
You're the modern day Father Brown, are you?
Sorry, yeah.
Brown.
I just love it, and it changes. You know, obviously it changes through seasons, but changes over the years, and you find places you haven't seen, and which I recently did in Kerry, in wind and rain swept Kerry 2 weeks ago, and they had glorious sunshine up to the time I got there, so I ruined that on them. But you know, just different clothing, but it doesn't make the photography any easier when the weather's bad. But well, I just enjoy it. I enjoy it, you know.
Well, it's great to be able to sort of, I won't say indulge your passion, but to be involved in your passion and to be able to turn it into sort of a business, which is fantastic.
Yeah, true. You know what I mean? So because I went from, if you don't want me to, I'll tell you what happened after the camera center then.
Yes.
I got to know a lot of the sales reps coming in, and there was one particular company that I had my eyes on. And so I was speaking to them about anything comes up, let me know. And that happened. And I had the interviews, and I got a job in that company, who at the time were the agents for Fujifilm in Ireland.
Right.
And they had other agencies as well, well known, such as Olympus cameras, and they had a lot of professional equipment, lighting equipment and that kind of thing, a lot of products in there.
Yes.
So, and I spent 15 years with them.
Wow. I mean, there you go. I mean, you really found your element there. But you got involved in the early days in telesales. Just tell me about that sort of experience, because again, we're all sort of young and shy at a particular time. And I mean, lucky enough, you have a knowledge about the what you're selling or taking orders for.
Yeah, and that was exactly it. So the job I was given in that company, they were called JJ Silver was the name of the company, but they were the agents of Fujifilm, based up in Glasnevin. They're still there, but they're now Fuji Ireland. But so I was very much answering the phone from customers calling in, placing orders or looking for information on products. And I had a good knowledge of the products from the camera center. There were particular products that I liked, not just the reps coming in, but I did actually like the products. So I had a good knowledge of them. And they were they held very regular trade shows. So I was able to meet some of these customers that I was talking on the phone, which made the thing quite good, you know, quite interesting. And that's what I did. So telesales was, it wasn't me phoning. The odd time you would phone to promote a product, it was very much answering people, placing orders, which is somewhat different.
You were an order taker rather than somebody
that exactly,
yeah,
a pen pusher, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's handy. But you, as you said, you spent a long time with this company, so there was a progression. Tell us how that started.
Well, yeah, when I was in there, then I was looking at I wanted to be a sales rep. I wanted to be on the road, and so I sought that, and it took about a year to happen. When somebody either moved on or they got busier, and I was given the chance to be the sales rep, which I took and grabbed and was quite very successful at. So I covered pretty much anything outside of the cities in Ireland, because the sales managers had the cities. So I had everything else. So I could be up in Donegal, you know, driving back on a Friday evening to be in Wexford on Monday morning or wherever it was. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and you know, helped build the brands very much so, because Fuji did become number one quite quickly in those years. And then the progression after that was I then became sales manager. So I was responsible for the main accounts, and responsible for the sales reps as well. Who were at the other areas. Fuji were involved in the you know, not just photographic, they did medical products such as X-ray and that, and they involved in other areas.
So they had a broad portfolio.
A lot of, and tape, like we had all the business of Windmill Lane, motion picture film, that sort of thing. So there was a lot of stuff going on there. And so I then went from sales manager to sales and marketing manager, because I mentioned earlier I went on to do marketing, which I did. And so I stayed at that position then until I left, which was in 1992. This week I left 30 years ago, 1992, yeah.
And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my studio guest today is Leo O'Connor. Leo, can I just take you back, the whole sales rep thing? What do you think makes a good sales rep?
I think too, in my case anyway, I think I was honest, and that's the truth, and that might be a contradiction in some people's ideas of a sales rep, but I definitely was. I had a love of the product too, which, you know, it makes it, because I knew the product before I sold it. I used the product myself in terms of my hobby, and I fully understood what I could do, so I was able to talk, and if someone wanted to know something technical like that as well, but not to be, I never pushed an order. I never. I was very much I suppose I'm quite relaxed and not so much laid back, but
personable, isn't that what they call it?
Yeah, personable is probably the right word, and I'm easy to get on with. And I simply presented the product, and I rarely did not get an order.
And I
Very,
suppose that the knowledge must have been fantastic because, again, people are always asking questions, and the fact that you're able to answer them in an honest way
yeah.
gives them a confidence in you.
Yeah, exactly. And I still do that today, you know, it's just to be very honest about what the product can do or can't do, or what I can do or can't do.
One of the
And
things
follow up as
I'm
well. If there's
fascinated.
any problems with customers, customers will have difficulties. It could be account department, it could be the service department, cameras and whatever. I always followed it up. So
Yeah.
so they began to trust me, maybe.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, and I've heard, and I'll be interested in your perspective on it. A mistake a lot of companies make is taking a great sales rep off the road and then making them a sales manager. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it didn't. Yeah, well, I thought that I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in other organizations where people were moved out of sales altogether, not just taking them off the road, but moving them to a different department, maybe marketing or something, but not being involved in the day-to-day sales. And I was fortunate, I think, that when I was moving up the ladder, I was able to pick staff. I was able to pick a rep, sometimes from internally, and then replace them.
Sure.
So there was a knowledge already there, and I also made a point of bringing them, whoever that person was, around the customers myself, letting them know where I was going and that I'd still be there, and that they would be looking after accounts. And that, so in our organization, I don't think it was an issue, but I've seen it in other companies where it was an absolute disaster.
Sure.
Totally, they would have lost business, and probably we took advantage of it from other competitors too, possibly.
Yeah.
When that happened, but I have seen that, yeah. So it can be a difficult one to juggle properly. Can be.
Yeah.
But I think to keep the customer informed is the thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it myself before, where not alone do you lose a great sales rep on the road, but you end up with an awful manager.
Yeah,
So, as you said, finding
yeah.
the balance right. 30 years, my goodness me. That prompted a trip, by the way, if I'm not mistaken.
It did. This last week, 30 years ago, I was working in Cologne for Fuji at an exhibition called Photokina, which was a massive exhibition. It's the World Photographic Fair, and like enormous bus service around it. And the Fuji stand alone would have been nearly the size of the main hall in the RDS, you know. And there
Wow.
was just, and that was only part of a hall.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I decided, any excuse, I suppose, but I decided, sure, you know, I've been promised myself to back to Cologne. It's a beautiful city anyway, but you don't really see it when you're working. And I was
Sure.
there a lot, but always working, so you get an hour or two. So I took the opportunity to go last week, and I visited Dusseldorf, where I'd be very regularly. That's where Fuji's head office is, or was, and Bonn, where I used to stay as well. So I took last week out, and it lashed rain again.
There's something about you and rain,
There you
isn't there?
go. I know, yeah. I must have brought it from Kerry with me, but there you go. But it's yeah, very enjoyable. It was lovely. I'm glad I did it. Very relaxed.
And Fuji offered you the opportunity to travel quite a bit around Europe too when you were
Yeah,
working.
well, they would have, Dusseldorf would have been regularly, because the head office would be, we were part of the Ireland and England were together as such in terms of business. So I'd be in London very regularly as well. But they would hold a conference once or twice a year somewhere in Europe. Fuji themselves would. There could be some training involved. So I've covered most of Europe in terms of traveling to cities and areas, and with Fuji. So there was there was extensive travel over those years, a lot. I even got to the World Cup in 1990 from them.
Good man.
Yeah, I did. We were one of the sponsors, and Fuji were building a paper factory in Italy at the time. So
Wow.
I used my contacts.
Networking, why not?
Yeah.
The advantage of networking. So, okay, I mean, you've had a career, but you've decided you'd like one for yourself, something that you can control and steer. So what was the sort of momentum? What was the change that suddenly made it all happen for you?
It was actually in my mind for quite a while, and that I was. I mean, I'm not afraid of hard work. I've always done long hours, etc., etc. But I think I wanted to do something for myself.
Sure.
Before I got too much older, I suppose, at the time. I was in my mid-30s then, or close to it, and so I just approached the subject with my boss, the managing director of the company, and saying that I really would like to do something myself.
Sure.
We worked out something. I had to give 10 months notice at the time because of the way things
Wow.
worked, and that was fine. And they were very supportive and very helpful to me, which I'm still very grateful for. So, and I was going to stay in the business that I knew, which is photographic. So we did set up retail but I didn't keep that terribly long. It was tough as well, but I didn't keep it terribly long as I also involved part of what I do now in that. We were doing photographic printing, but most people who were doing that were not doing framing, and I didn't see the sense in that. I said, surely we can offer both. I said, and over the next couple of years, then I moved. I more and more got out the photographic and into picture framing, which we did. So, but the idea was it was just in my head. I just had this thing to do something for myself.
Right.
No more than that. Not
that itch.
That itch, yeah. It's definitely an itch, and I wasn't. I could do better for myself, or I can do this. Because I have to be honest. For a couple of years, I missed the salary.
Yes, of course.
But I still wouldn't change it if I went back. You know what I mean? It's they were 30 years at this now. It's a long time. Though it doesn't feel that, and we've had a lot of ups and downs in that time. But it's all experience. It's all, and I love what I do. This is the thing. So
it's a hobby, Leo. That's what it is. It's
exactly.
not even a job.
I've never worked a day in my life, is what people
think,
because I enjoy it.
And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my studio guest today is Leo O'Connor. And we were just talking about, you've taken that giant leap into the world of business. And as you know, I'm always saying that's a subject that's not taught. So finding your feet is always going to be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and okay, I was still pretty much in the business that I knew, but I knew it from a supply end rather than retail. It is very different. I was still I was involved in marketing, so I did promote the business in the areas that I knew, which are very different than today. I can tell you, this is before the internet and everything else that came along.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it was new, definitely, and I definitely made mistakes, and some of them costly, and some of them not so. But that's how you learn, It's once you learn from them, But I did find that as I said, it was in the photographic business, but I moved away from it. By 1986, I was totally in the framing business, totally.
Well, that's quite interesting because, if you look at the sort of camera industry, there was a tsunami of technology coming your way, but there's still a hybrid out there. There's the diehards who are still into their paper and film and all of that, and that's a particular type.
No, there is, yeah. There's still clubs who operate in film. I know a number of photographers that we do framing for them who are still using film. Now they'll use digital for a job probably, but they still like to shoot for their own material on film, and it's good. It's definitely there,
Yeah, you're an interesting person in the sense that you've spotted a gap in the market, which is around framing, which I don't know how much knowledge you had around framing, but I'm sure you learned it fairly quickly.
I had no knowledge apart from what I knew how to use them. When we initially started doing picture framing as in offering that service, we were using another company, not ourselves. And we did that for about a year, and we were let down very badly with them at one point. Wow. And which I decided, and that part of the business was growing. We were moving everything in that area. We had also just taken over a gallery.
All right.
So we were now selling art as well. So which we still do, but it's mostly photographic, but we still have our gallery business. And so I decided then that we would have a look at doing our own, and that's what I did. I went to the NEC in Birmingham, the spring show, which used to have 2 halls of framing equipment in it, doesn't anymore. Spent a few days there, and then bought the equipment that we needed. And I already had a framer in mind that I had poached, or that I was poached, and already discussed business with him.
Yeah.
And he came initially to work for us. I didn't know how to frame at the time. That's the truth. I now know a lot and do a lot of the framing, but I didn't at the time.
Yeah,
so you learn.
These skills you learn. But isn't it funny what prompted you to set it up was somebody letting you down badly, and had they serviced you properly, you mightn't have ever kind of set up that.
That's true. I probably would have just kept going using the services of another picture or framing company.
Yeah, it's amazing how you kind of get let down and are forced to make a decision on that. Let's just talk about the other side of the business. Soulair, is that the gallery side of it?
That's right. Yeah. So there I set up, it'll be 2 years old in December. Probably spent about a year setting it up. And I had in my mind for some time to set up a gallery of our, Sul Éireann loosely means Ireland's eye. Sul Éireann is actually Ireland's eye. And Sul Éireann didn't sit right. The working title on the project with the agency that I worked with for the website and the logos, etc., the branding. We got, and in that we reduced it to Sul Éireann. We also I'd worked for a marketing company prior to that as well, and the three of us came up with the name Sul Éireann.
Right.
But the branding then, who put the finishing touches to it and how it looked, and it looks really well. So, but the idea was to have a website of Irish, mainly photographic images. So have art on it as well, but mainly photographic images of modern Ireland, but nothing else. Because most photographers based in Ireland or Irish photographers have their own websites, and they have Irish images on it and some beautiful pictures, but they also have the Arc de Triomphe in Times Square, etc., etc. So I just wanted this to be Ireland. I have, anyone who knows me knows I've a bit of a massive passion for Ireland. I love the country, and I travel to it regularly, most months somewhere for a couple of days walking with my cameras. Yeah. So it came from that. I was selling my own material, and that's where it came from. So we put the site out 2 years ago in December, and it's slowly building. It's not something that's going to take off overnight. We are selling around the world. We have the showroom in our framing business is now still there.
Okay.
And recently we just published a book as well, our first book. So there's yeah, I'm loving it. So,
this is it. I can hear it in your voice. And if you take something, I mean, realistically, what you've done here is you've taken a hobby, and I think this is a great example for people out there. You've taken something that you love and you've turned it into a business. But more importantly, which a lot of people miss out, and that's the next step, is niching that business. So it's your second passion, which is Ireland. So you've tied two together, and turned it into a business. And now you have access to the world.
But that's it, you see, and it's I've got to spend more time on it, to be honest with, and I am doing that. Working to the I would like, thankfully the frame of it is still very busy. I can't just step out of it completely yet, but I'm going that direction to spend more time in Sul Éireann, yeah, it's such a passion for me. So it's easy for me to make that decision in that sense too. It's got to pay for itself, obviously, because these things have to. There's only so much you can put in before you have to get some of it back, if not all of it, So
well, you hope so. You're a business person,
exactly. So that's where we're getting at, and that's coming, So like, I mean, this morning I just checked in. There's only one order in today, but it's from Los Angeles. It's really interesting. It really is. Now, COVID didn't help it in terms of orders from around the world, I can tell you. But we had COVID only kicked in shortly after we started. Anyway.
Yes, of course.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. It really is, and it's nice to
your passion around the world. Tell me about you embarked on a sort of major project, which is the book. Let's just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, okay. Again, this came from, it's amazing how things start. This came from just a chance meeting, I suppose, with the director of the James Joyce Centre, Darina Gallagher, and we again during COVID. So we had met at a business meeting briefly on Zoom, because it's in the middle of COVID, and she really liked the concept and what we were doing with Sul Éireann. And so we met in the Botanic Gardens, 2 meters apart, with paper coffees, and just chatted. She just wanted to see, could we come up with something? Could Sul Éireann come up with something that we could do to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of Ulysses, which was last February, but we were talking the previous May or June.
Yes, of course.
And I said, yeah, I'm sure we can. I wasn't quite sure what we were going to do. I said to her, in order for it to be a benefit to Sul Éireann, which it needs to be, and putting the time into it, it has to be an exhibition of some type.
Right.
Because that fits in with what we do. And so I went away thinking about it, and then I found a friend of mine over 40 years. You may know of him, Tom Lawler. He's the
Sure.
over X Irish Times, but we've been friends for many years. We kept in touch. I would have met him through Fuji, obviously, because we had all the press business, so press photographers, I knew them all, and we kept up our relationship after I left, etc. So and we met as well and had a chat. Anyway, from that we came up with the idea of taking some of the stories involving women in Ulysses, the women, their stories, rather than just Leopold and Molly and Stephen or whoever. That's who gets all of
yeah, that's the usual.
Just take the women.
Yeah.
So we did. We took that. Not quite sure where we're going to go with it. Tom said he would stage the pictures and take them. I just insisted it had to be done in a modern Dublin. It has to be Dublin. And so he came back to me with 4 or 5 pictures, and I just thought, this is it. And I went back to see Darina, showed her the pictures, and she was over the moon. She couldn't believe what we were doing. So not just, she liked the women angle, and we hadn't thought of any other reason. I mean, it's quite in the news now, women being written back from into history and all this kind of thing. And that's happening, but that wasn't in our minds. It just hadn't been done before. So we initially thought we'd have 18 women, because 18 chapters, but we've ended up with 20 because we can't reduce it. And all of the women are friends, colleagues, family. They're all Dublin, and I got the book. So this is for the exhibition. I'm running away myself here, and I won't take too long with this, but just bear in mind, this was during COVID, so it was to be an exhibition online during COVID. And then things started opening up. And we came up then, myself and Tom were chatting over coffee, and we said, there could be a book here. So, and that's the direction we went then as well. So there's a permanent exhibition in James Joyce Centre that was launched on the 7th of June. We also had the Botanic Gardens and a few other places, and the book then was launched just before Bloomsday, and printed in Dublin and everything. So it's called Sirens in Bloom.
Sirens in Bloom. That's fantastic. And tell us, Leo, just in the last 20 seconds we've got.
Okay, that was quick.
Yeah, I told you we'd go quickly. And tell me where people can find out more about you and where they can see your gallery.
The gallery is in Fisborough. It's the best way to get us is probably at framefx.ie.
Framefx.ie.
Yeah, and that will bring them. They can also check the gallery through that same. It's a separate. It's